If you were talking to Azula, you were either talking about how great she was or how bad you were. Those were the only two options. Anytime Azula showed up, he was immediately psyched out. And she just put forth like that much effort, and he was on the ground, knocked out. That's what a good manipulator does. They really don't force you to do anything. They kind of make you feel like you're making a choice, and so you're just mentally messed up. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, and over here we discuss life topics by analyzing characters from popular TV and film. So you read the title. Today we're talking about Azula, and we're going to be discussing manipulation and masks. So I'm coming at this from the standpoint of if you want to learn to be more manipulative, or you're trying to figure out how to get out of a situation where you are being manipulated. Both of those apply here. So let's talk about Azula for a bit. Azula is one of my favorite villains of all time. I love her voice. I love her design, character design. I love a smart villain that manipulates people. And even though we didn't get a ton of backstory with Azula, she still delivered that menacing energy aura that villains have to have in order for them to be successful. So I really love her character, and she didn't even come in until season 2, so props to her for doing such a good job. Okay, enough of my fangirling. So Azula is the daughter of Fire Lord Ozai. She is the younger sister of Zuko, and she is an adept firebender, better than her brother Zuko, and she is the favorite child of Ozai. And as I said before, she's extremely cunning, extremely intelligent. She knows what she's doing, not only when it comes to just brute force firebending, which she's great at, but also when it comes to dealing with people, getting them on her side, and being able to exploit the weaknesses of others. She's great at what she does. But how, practically speaking, does she actually do this? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you 3 tips, 3 little tools that you can use to be manipulative or to deal with manipulation. All right. So number 1, keep your weaknesses to yourself. The thing about Azula is we never really knew that much about her until it was time for us to know things about her. She was the opposite of an open book. If you were talking to Azula, you were either talking about how great she was or how bad you were. Those were the only 2 options. And this is one of the ways in which she maintained her power. No one could come at her with anything because they didn't have any ammunition. I'm not saying that you should never let anyone know when you're having an issue or a problem. That would be irresponsible. But you really have to evaluate who you're going to tell and how you're going to tell them, because the things that you tell other people about yourself can always come back and be used against you, and you don't want that. So sure, you might have friends, maybe a counselor or someone like that you can trust, but outside of those people that you know are trustworthy, responsible, and that can actually help you, stop telling them your business. Keep your stuff off social media. Keep your stuff out of conversations. You know, these toxic people that are in your life, those friends that are shady and can't keep their mouths closed, those family members that be doing too much. Anyone who is not on a need-to-know basis does not need to know what's going on in your life. This is how you kind of brand yourself and keep people thinking highly of you without having to do very much. If you all recall the season 3 episode, The Beach, iconic episode. The Beach is one of my favorites. But if you recall that episode when the 4 friends were sitting together on the beach and they were sort of telling their life stories, it's kind of giving us, the audience, a clue into why they were the way that they were. If you recognize, Azula was the only one saying something for the first time. All 3 of them have stated to Azula at least all the things that they said on that beach. That's why Azula was unamused. That's why she was unsurprised. She been knew. She been knew all this stuff that they were saying, and yet this was the first time she had ever mentioned, and this is me speculating, but like because we know who her character is, I think we can kind of say this. They didn't know that this is how she felt, because she made it a point to keep that to herself. And she did that in order to maintain a higher standing than the rest of them. She called them pathetic when they, which is really sad when you think about it. But anyway, she called them pathetic when they told everyone what was going on with them. And right after, Zuko called her Miss Perfect, or whatever he said, like, because your life is just so perfect. Well, if you want that image, if you want that brand, then you can't tell people about the things that make you not look perfect. If you're going to manipulate someone, they have to have a high opinion of you. On the flip side of that, if you're not the manipulator, but you're looking for a way to get out of it, there's an understanding that you have to have that no one is perfect. You have to realize and understand that most people are showing you the highlight reel in real life and online. You have to know that everyone has several things that they struggle with, no matter how they look on the outside, no matter what they choose to tell you, what not to tell you. You have to take people off of pedestals. Don't put anyone on a pedestal. Don't put yourself on a pedestal. Understand that we are all on the same playing field when it comes to flaws, mistakes, things that have happened in our lives. There is no one to worship or to put on a pedestal. And once you realize that, you won't deify anyone to the point where they can come in and tell you what to do and how to live your life because you think they're so great and you believe them. Number 2 is to sharpen your observational skills. So going back to that same episode of the beach, when they were going around the circle saying whatever bothered them. So they were all using this time to sort of relieve themselves of some pressure, some anxiety that they were feeling. They were just kind of putting their feelings out there. But I wonder how many of them were actually taking note and listening and deciding their next move based on what the person next to them just said about themselves. Probably only Azula. And that's what being an observant person can get you. It gets you information, data, intel on other people. When you're a good listener, when you watch what people say and do, when you listen to what people say motivates them. If you're going to be a manipulator, you have to know what motivates people, what makes people emotional, and what makes them react as opposed to thinking and responding. You have to know what people's goals are, what their values are, and you can't do that if you're the one talking all the time. You have to listen, you have to wait for people to say what they're going to say, and you have to be a person at least that people perceive that they can talk to, which means you have to be the more subdued person sometimes. So sharpen those observational skills. Even when you're in mundane conversations, use this as practice time. People are just rambling. Listen to what they're saying and see if you can come up with any kind of conclusion. Can you make a valid observation or conclusion about someone that you've been listening to? If you can't, you probably weren't listening very well. And you're probably not going to know what to say if you wanted to get something out of them. Let's look at the relationship between Azula and Zuko. Brother and sister, Zuko's 16, Azula's 14. Zuko is not nearly as good of a firebender as Azula is. She's much more talented in that area, and one would argue she's much more mature and advanced than her older brother. And she has been taking note of this since they were children. She realized early on that Zuko was a bit insecure about some of these things, about Azula and Ozai's relationship. She recognized that he was insecure about his firebending skills, and she definitely observed his reaction to being banished. She picks on him often about how obsessed he is with honor and regaining his father's love. And that's why every time she approaches Zuko, really just about every time she sees him, she's able to just completely shatter him with about 2 sentences. Immediately, every time she sees him, just sink into the couch. And he does it just about every single time because she knows exactly what to say to him. In fact, that's one of the things that really annoyed me about Zuko, especially earlier on, was just anytime Azula showed up, he was immediately psyched out. And she just put forth like that much effort, just and he was on the ground, knocked out. She barely even had to fight. But that's because she knew what made him tick. She knew exactly what to say. She knew exactly how to deliver things. I'm not sure what episode this was, but it was season 2. She came to capture Iroh and Zuko. But instead of just doing that forcefully, she fed Zuko the idea that father wants you back. He wants to welcome you back with open arms, and she just spins the story, and it's very believable because she's a great manipulator. She knew what to say and how to say it, and that's because she knew Zuko's motivations, and she knew that would make him emotional. So she was able to feed him that easily. Iroh, of course, could see through it. But that episode, also in the Crossroads of Destiny, we all know how she fed those narratives to him about this being his moment to define his own destiny and blah blah blah, all this mumbo jumbo that was just speaking volumes to Zuko. He was just eating it up, and he eventually makes the wrong choice, of course. And again, she was able to do all of these things. Same thing with May and Ty Lee. When she approaches them, especially Ty Lee, she knows exactly what to do to get Ty Lee on board. She attends her show. She messes things up a little bit, puts that menacing sense of danger that she's so good at into it. And she kind of forces her to come along, but without forcing her to come along. That's what a good manipulator does. They really don't force you to do anything. They kind of make you feel like you're making the choice, and so you're just mentally messed up. Also, as another example of Azula being good or having great observational skills, if you guys remember the episode where Azula, Ty Lee, and May infiltrate the Earth Kingdom posing as Kyoshi warriors, and Azula is in like this underground thing where she's officially taking over the Dai Li. If you guys remember that scene, she's walking past all the soldiers saying this amazing, powerful speech and scaring the crap out of everybody. She comes to this one soldier who has a scar on his face, and she immediately identifies him and starts speaking directly to him when she's stating that if she senses any hesitation, she'll wipe it out. So she stopped at that guy specifically because if he's scarred, that probably means he's had to be punished for something that he's done by one of the officials, probably for being hesitant or something like of that nature. That's what I took it as. It could easily not be that. He just could have been hurt in battle or something. But anyway, the point is she sensed a weakness, and those are the kinds of things that unfortunately manipulative people really take note of. If you look insecure, if you look like you don't know what you're doing, like you need help, like you've been hurt before, bad posture, you're looking down, you look like you've been beaten, something like that, people will take advantage of that. They will come at you with a different kind of energy, and they will see how you respond to it, and that will tell them if you're going to be open to them kind of lording over you. And so that's just an example of her noticing something and exploiting it like she always does. So just keep that in mind, both sides. If you're trying to be manipulative, look for people that look like that. Well, and if you saw him, he had the scar, but he was also just very shaky and like a little scared looking compared to some of the other agents, which I'm sure they were all frightened. It's Azula yelling at you, but he just looked a little more frightened than everyone else. So keep that in mind, and also keep that in mind if you feel like someone is trying to mess with you. Sit up straight, look them in the eye, and you let them know that I'm not the one, okay? Right. Okay, number 3 is to keep people looking for your approval. This is how you maintain your power in a relationship. Once you've kind of gotten through those first 2 steps and now they're listening to you, this is how you maintain it. You want to keep them looking for your approval, because at this point they look up to you because number 1, you've kept your weaknesses to yourself, so they're thinking highly of you, more highly than they should of you. That's established. You know what makes them tick, you know what to say to them, you know how to speak to them, and now you want to keep them. Let's look at the situation where Azula gives Zuko the credit for killing the Avatar, which of course we know is not true, but she tells Ozai that it is true. She gets Ozai to approve of Zuko. It's all going well. Why does she do that? Well, she tells us why. It's to keep Zuko on edge. It's to keep Zuko insecure so she can continue to manipulate him. Because now there's a secret. Now there's something to be exposed about Zuko. And she has the power to do that. But because she's not doing that, she's kind of putting on this kind facade. I'll let you take the credit. Now, again, his mind is all messed up, which is where you want to keep people if you're trying to manipulate them. You never want them to think straight. Because if Azula would have taken credit for killing Aang, and she wasn't sure that she killed him, they go back to the Fire Nation. Zuko might be let back in since it would be all over. And maybe things would go back to normal. There would be no edge that she had. There would be nothing to lord over him to keep him coming back to her for anything. Because essentially everything would be solved. It'd be normal because Azula did it and Azula was supposed to do it anyway. There wouldn't be as much leverage if there was something she could hold over his head. Okay, and once again, on the flip side of that, if you don't want to be manipulated by a person, come to a place of self-assurance and self-confidence that you're not looking for anyone else's approval. You don't need someone to lead you and to guide you and to tell you did a good job and to give you a cookie and a sticker and a star and pat you on the back in front of other people. You don't need all that because you are secure enough and you are confident enough in your own skills and identity that you're able to do that for yourself without the aid of other people. Okay, and I said I was going to give you 3, but here is a bonus one because we don't want to just look at the good of a character. We kind of have to look at the other side as well to get a more complete picture. So the bonus tip, don't be too sure of your footing or your standing with a person if you're trying to manipulate them. Never get so high in your own head that you don't think that people can grow and develop and eventually see past what you're trying to do to them, because, well, they can. Of course, when we think about the example of Mai and Ty Lee betraying Azula, that scene, which was the beginning of her full-on breakdown that she had at the end of the series, was a result of her getting a little too comfortable with what she thought her skills were in terms of manipulating those two. The iconic scene of "I love Zuko when I fear you. No, you miscalculated." All of that was just pure aggravation because she really thought she had them and she didn't. And that realization shattered her mind. They put her in the position that she had been putting them in, shattering her mind and confusing her to the point where she lost her footing and her power. So always understand that people might grow out of your little manipulation tactics. And you can either be prepared for that and do something about it, or just kind of cut your losses. And on the flip side of that one, there's always hope. If you've been manipulated in the past and maybe you fear it's happening now again, understand that you can always get yourself out of a situation. We have free will as individuals, and there's always room to learn and to grow and to recognize what's going on around you and to get yourself out of a situation like that. You can always leave. So don't keep yourself stuck mentally in a place where you don't want to be. All right. Alrighty guys, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And the question for this video, if you want to leave your answer in the comments, is: has a friend or a family member ever tried to manipulate you? And what did you do? All right, leave your answers below. I'll see you guys in the next video.